The reality is cold email does not work. And you're right. If you don't know what you're doing, it's become the game now where if you don't do A through Z right, you really don't stand a chance. And I've been doing cold emailing for a long time. I remember my first intro to cold email was my senior year of college. I was running an entrepreneurship program and I really wanted Mark Cuban at the time to speak at an event for my school. And I cold emailed him and he very politely responded, no thanks. But it was like, oh, wow, I can get to Mark Cuban. I could get to anybody.
Welcome, badass entrepreneurs. It's time to hear the world's movers, shakers, and difference makers spill their secrets for unlimited success. So strap in, for Badass Entrepreneurs Only begins now. Welcome, badass entrepreneurs. My guest today is Adam Rosen, and he is truly a badass entrepreneur. Adam is the founder of the Email Outreach Company, a company specializing in helping startups accelerate growth through cold email outreach strategies. Cold email. I thought that was dead. Well, we'll be asking Adam all about that. He's an advisor for Door of Clubs, a business that recruits college students. And now he's in the cold email world and owns the nomadcloud.com, which is a newsletter with over 200,000 subscribers, supporting entrepreneurs and business professionals who want to explore the world and grow professionally. All right, enough with the intro. Let's get badass. Adam Rosen, welcome to For Badass Entrepreneurs Only.
Dan, I love the intro and I'm psyched to be here. It's great to chat with you again. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, so can we just get right into it, Adam?
Let's do it. That's what I think we should do. I'm with you. Let's do it.
All right. Cold email, right? Now, when people start talking about cold email, it sounds like 1987. Why is it that you think, and you're successful at cold email, why is it that it's still a viable way for outreach?
Well, first, when we think about cold email, it's important to know just what's the goal of cold email. Just like what's the goal of doing a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad or doing SEO or putting up a billboard in Times Square. The whole goal is to connect person A to person B, and person B being someone that wants your services. And for me, like my intro to the world of cold emailing, because it's a good question you ask, is cold email still work? Is cold email dead? And it's one of those questions I get probably most frequently at this point. Does cold email work? And the reality is cold email does not work. And you're right. If you don't know what you're doing, it's become the game now where if you don't do A through Z right, you really don't stand a chance. And I've been doing cold emailing for a long time. I remember my first intro to cold email was my senior year of college. I was running an entrepreneurship program and I really wanted Mark Cuban at the time to speak at an event for my school. And I cold emailed him and he very politely responded, no thanks. But it was like, oh, wow, I could get to Mark Cuban. I could get to anybody. And then when I started my first company, Door of Clubs, which you mentioned in the intro, is one of the startup that I founded. And with Door of Clubs, how we got just about every customer was from cold emailing. Think like Bank of America, Amazon, Apple, Goldman, Disney. We got just about all of them through cold email. Even how we raised money, how we found our first investor was through cold email. How we found the company that ended up buying mine was also through cold email. It was like the lifeline of everything that we did. And cold email, though, was very different than it was in the old days, 10 years ago, but also the old days of a year ago. Cold email is very different today, going back to my point earlier, where if you don't do A through Z right, you don't stand a chance. But if you do A through Z right, which is very doable for anyone listening to this podcast, you can and should be able to get great results through it.
Okay, so you said that there's a way to do cold email right, and there's probably a lot more ways to do it wrong. What are the three big mistakes that people make when it comes to cold email?
Great question. So if you are emailing off your main domain, cold emailing, mass emailing off your main domain, you're doing it wrong and you're putting a lot at risk. If you are sending emails that are long, if you are sending emails with a lot of links in them, if you are sending emails that aren't personalized, you are doing it wrong. If you're getting low quality lists that are going to be bouncing back, you are doing it wrong. Those are just three very simple basics. If you're writing copy and not adding spin tags, you're doing it wrong.
Not adding what?
It's called spin tags. So another way the cold email world has changed Like a year ago, just over a year ago, we could write one good piece of copy, send it out. And as long as the market was resonating with that message, we would just keep running with that copy. We'd sit back and just relax and watch the copy do its thing. Now that's not good enough anymore. As a lot of people know, the cold email world has changed. Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, all these providers have changed a lot of what they allow to go in the inbox and what they put into spam. And one of those things is around something called spin tax. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple. Basically, what spin tax does is it randomizes different parts of your email. So every email looks slightly different. And I'll give you a basic example. Let's say I'm sending a mass email and there's 3 people that are on that email. We'll call one of them Dan, we'll call one of them Adam, and we'll call one of them Samantha. Maybe Dan, you get an email that says, "Hi, Dan." I might get an email that says, "Hello, Adam." Samantha might get an email that just says, "Samantha." There's minor changes throughout the email that make it slightly nuanced in each email so that Google and Yahoo and these other providers think, oh, this isn't a mass email, because every email is its own unique email. Every email is slightly different. So even things like spin tax is no longer a nice to have. It's more of a must have if you want to get results through cold email.
Okay. So I'm guessing that this spin tax is something that you provide, correct?
Yep. Yeah. And a lot of providers at this point, they make it a little bit easier for you to get it too. Even ChatGPT, and we have a prompt that we can give for free that anyone can have, which would include spin tax. But yes, it's not like some crazy, highly technical thing, even though it probably sounds like it is.
Okay. As a provider, that's part of the service, right? I would guess that there's parts of the email that you set up to be rewritten. Is that fair?
Yeah, the whole email. And when it comes to like how we work with our customers, one way is they give us the keys and we get them on meetings. We do everything. We reach out to the prospects, they have the list, build the infrastructure, everything. We book the meeting on our customers' calendars and they show up. But we have more of it. We also have a DIY offering, which is for earlier stage companies with things sub 10 employees, where we set up their whole cold email infrastructure, their domains, their emails. We help them with copy, we train them. And that's where they would use things. We would help support them with their spin tax so that every email looks a little bit different throughout all parts of their email, not just the start, not just the finish, but the whole email. There's slight nuance to it.
Okay. So let's take an example, right? Let's say that somebody listening is starting a podcast and they want to get some really badass guests on their podcast. So they're going to send out an email, and that email has a link to an application to be on the podcast, right? Because they want to make sure that before they book someone, they want to make sure that these are some great guests. And I know that you are listening right now, you're thinking, hey, that's a great idea. This is a great way to start a podcast, right? That's what they want to do. How do they create the email, or how do they send out cold emails to get people to click that link and fill out that form?
The first thing I would advise is to make one slight change to your strategy, because I think all of it makes a ton of sense. And I've worked with people that have done the exact same strategy that you're talking about, Dan, because it's a really smart strategy for a couple of reasons. But the slight change I would make is I wouldn't put a link in that first email. I would ask a question. Would you be interested in being on the podcast? And then I would send a link. Now, why would I do that? That feels like an extra step. Why would I want to add that extra step? The reason why you do that is because there are certain triggers that increase the likelihood that you end up in spam. One of those triggers is putting a link in an email. So you always want to avoid adding links when possible when doing mass outreach. So for us, we say, hey, are you interested in a 15-minute call versus here's a link to my calendar, book if you're interested. Of course, that sounds like it'd be a heck of a lot easier, but you're going to get a lot worse results because you're not going to get as many replies. And Google and Yahoo and these other providers are going to say, hey, here's a link in a mass email. Let's send them into spam versus the inbox.
Okay. Let's back up a little bit on this. I like this thread. Let's just keep going down it. All right. So instead of sending that first email with a link, I just say, hey, would you like to be on my new podcast? That's essentially it, right?
Yep. So I'll walk through basically, let's say I were to start a podcast tomorrow and I wanted to get the best guests in the world. Let's say I wanted my guest, let's give an exact example. Let's say I'm starting my company, email outreach company. We focus on sales and marketing leaders. So let's say maybe I start a podcast specific to email outreach. And ideally, I want to get on the phone I want CMOs, chief marketing officers, to be on my podcast. Why? Because I want to hear from them, but two, also because I'd like eventually to sell them and then become a customer of mine.
Right.
And let's say my ideal customer is chief marketing officers companies in the US with 100 to 500 employees, and we'll just stick at that. So the first thing I would do is I would create my email infrastructure. Let's say there's 20,000 potential CMOs that I could reach out to. You're going to need to create.
And just out of curiosity, how are you sourcing all of these emails?
Yep. And I'll get to that because it's a great question, Dan. The first thing I would do is I would create the infrastructure. So let's say that you could reach out to 20,000 people. You need to create enough domains and emails to allow you to hit that scale. Because another one of the changes is you used to be able to send several hundred, if not thousand or more emails per email inbox. Now that's not the case. You can only send 20 emails per inbox in a day. So in order to reach out to 20,000 people over a few months stretch even, you have to create probably 60 to 100 or more email inboxes that we're going to send from.
Okay, so I know you're listening to this going, oh crap, this is way too much. Like, this can't be true. I just set up 100 different email boxes, 100 different domains for different emails. This is what you're saying, right, Adam?
Correct. And I'll say two things. One, it's not as complicated as you think. And two, if it is, just know that our DIY, our small service offering, we do all that for you. So you don't have to do a single one of those. You don't have to do any of that. We just do it for you. And it's not a lot of money. So just know that you can do it on your own if you really want to. But if you don't want to do it on your own, but you still want to get the results, know there's people like me and companies like mine out there that could just do all that for you. We don't have to deal with that headache. But unfortunately, going back to what I said earlier, the cold email world has changed so much. If you don't do A through Z right, don't bother cold emailing because you're not going to get results. So you have to set up that infrastructure. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have.
Okay.
Now, once I had that infrastructure built, I would use the technology that I love and that we use with our company, where we're sending over 1 million emails a month, is a tool called Instantly. Instantly allows you, to your point, Dan, to get lists, to send campaigns, and to manage all the replies. It's all done on one platform. My team, I do not have a big team. I have a team of 8 folks. We're servicing, again, over 1 million emails that are being sent every month. And we're able to do it because that technology is so powerful and so easy to use. So it's not super complicated. So I would get a list of those chief marketing officers in the US that have 100 to 500 employees. I would put them into a campaign. I would write high converting copy, which we can get as nitty gritty as you'd like into that copy.
Let's talk about that. What is high converting copy as opposed to, I'll just have ChatGPT write it, or I'll just write something that I think sounds cool? What makes high converting copy?
So I'll give you a few examples. And one of which, if you're using ChatGPT to write your emails, unless you're an expert prompt writer, the output you're going to get is not going to be good. So for example, I spoke at an AI marketing conference in Hawaii earlier this year. And one of the things I did was a live demo of, if you use ChatGPT to write you a cold email, here's what it's going to produce for you, versus if you use like a prompt that we have, which again, I'll give to everyone for free if they want it to help you write your emails, what that'll produce. And it's night and day. The ChatGPT email is going to say, hi, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Adam Rosen. I'm the co-founder of Email Outreach Company. Thank you for taking the time to read this horrible email that I'm going to write. Like, it's going to produce, it's just, for lack of a better word, it's going to produce crap. So again, AI is only as powerful and is only as effective as the input that you provide.
It's a tool, right? Right. I mean, look, you can take a screwdriver and fix a bridge and save millions of lives, or you can stick it in your eye, right? It's just a tool. So how do we use that tool correctly?
Exactly. So you can use free GPT prompts out there for cold email, and like mine. But even if you use this as a simple framework for any email you send, and we get much more complex, and I'll share for anyone who wants like the PhD in cold emailing, but just the basics. Subject line. You want to know the best converting subject line? This subject line used to make my stomach turn. I fault my business partner on it, who runs the sending side of the house of my business. It was like, no, dude, I don't want to do that. But we got strong advice from one of our coaches. He's like, this thing works. And I was like, all right, fine, we'll try it out. Let's let the data tell us. It has greatly increased our positive replies and our replies in general. All it is, hi, first name. That's it.
Okay. I don't believe you. Right? Because the reason I don't believe you is because if I'm going to send an email, or if I'm going to open an email, I want to know the essence of what this email is about. Why would I open an email that just says like, hi, Coach Dan?
Dan, I could not agree with you more. I don't know why it hits so well, but it just does. Believe me, I was 100% on your side of even my co-founder. I was like, I agree. I'm not a fan of it either. It was actually one of my pet peeves when it comes to cold emailing. But the data says what the data says, and we've been testing it and A/B testing it for a long time. We're sending a lot of emails every month, and for better or for worse, it just gets the best results. Even better from some other subject lines that used to hit really well for us. But that's a subject line that the data just says this is the best subject line to use.
Why do you think that is?
It's simple. It feels personal. You're just like, what is this? And look, I don't think that'll be like that forever, by the way, because as people pick up on that, it's going to get oversaturated. We'll have to change it, obviously. But for right now, take advantage of it. It's simple, feels personal.
I have one of the things I talk to entrepreneurs a lot about is be interesting. Right? Everybody, thinks I'm really good at this. I've studied this. I know it really well. I'm great. Because I'm great at it, I'm going to get a lot of interest and make a lot of money. No, what you have to start with being interesting. And I think what you're saying is, in essence, people work really hard on crafting these subject lines, but they all sort of blur and look the same, right? If I'm looking at, and look, I just cleaned out my email box today at 700 emails, right? I had to go through and clean out. And all of those subject lines, now that I'm thinking about it, all those subject lines just sort of blur into one thing, right? They're all saying something, trying to grab my attention. But if it's just, hi, Dan, it's going to grab my attention because it's just different. It's interesting. And just for the human mind, what's different is always interesting. So, okay, I didn't believe you. Now I'm kind of sold. All right.
And that was really well said. You said it perfectly. And it's simple. It's like, all right, what the heck is this about? And then, all right, how do we now hook them in the beginning? Look, there's tools out there that when you're a PhD, like a clay.com, which takes personalization to another level. However, it's complex. Like we've invested a lot of hours and a lot of resources, financial resources into learning this technology. It's to the level where it looks like I just did 30 minutes of research on your website. Like I just got a meeting booked for me. I saw before we hopped on this podcast, Dan, and my team forwarded it to me and I read the copy because I don't do my team. I'm basically a customer of my own company. The email was insanely good. It really looked like I just researched this company I never heard of for 30 minutes, was very targeted about what their company does and how email outreach can help them. And I was like, this is pretty impressive. If you can learn tools like clay.com, it takes personalization to another level and your results to another level. But to start at square one, a basic way of looking at it is one line, what's the purpose of your email? So why are you reaching out? Next line on its own line, what's the problem you solve? Next sentence on its own line, what's the purpose? What's the solution? Next sentence on its own line, what's your social proof? I've worked with company A, B, and C. I've been featured on D, E, and F. And then last line, most importantly, what's your call to action? Hey, do you have 15 minutes to chat? So those are the basics. If anyone wants to steal my PS, which has made a lot of puppies happy and has increased our response rate by easily 2 to 3x, and also has greatly increased or decreased, I should say, the angry responses we get. Because we have a Slack channel that says, one of them is great, memorable responses, people saying this is the best email ever. Another Slack channel it's called bad, ugly responses, where people are sometimes literally telling us to F off. That bad, ugly Slack channel almost never gets used now. And a lot of it I credit to this PS. So in cold emailing, one of the most important things is not just meetings booked or positive replies, it's replies, period. The reason why is every reply helps your domain health. If you have strong domain health, you'll have more emails that get delivered into the inbox, which gives you a higher likelihood of getting responses. So we prioritize replies. So one of the ways we do that is in our PS, we basically say every reply helps our domain health. And in the spirit of that, we will donate 5 bowls of dog food if you just respond to this email. Positive or negative, you'll feed 5 dogs just by replying. Doesn't mean every reply now is a positive and they want to talk, but we get so many more replies and people that are so nice, like, hey, thanks so much for feeding the puppies. This isn't a fit for me, but thanks for reaching out. And because of that, we have a better domain health, which allows us to get more replies. And then every month we donate to a charity and we feed dog food, or for one of our customers, we plant trees. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Wow. So just a PS that says, hey, look, just reply to this email. If you do, that helps us and we'll feed X number of dogs. Is that essentially it?
Exactly.
Okay. So let's go back to the scenario that we were talking about, because I was really interested in the email that you were crafting or the different lines of the email. All right. So we want people to eventually fill out a form, right, to apply to be on this podcast. The first email, what do we want to say in it before we put in the form link? How does that go?
Yeah. The first email would be something very simple on the lines of basically, I run this podcast called X Marketing, whatever,
Mhm.
and I'm looking for leaders in the marketing space, which is why I reached out to you. I have a lot of respect for what you're building at Company Name as a chief marketing officer. I've had guests on like A, B, and C or whatever social proof, even if you're just starting out, there's some social proof that you have, whether
Mhm.
it's a previous company you worked at, previous company you built, a previous podcast you've been on, you want to showcase some type of social proof, and then just say, would you be interested in potentially being a guest? Thanks so much, Adam. Something basic along those lines to hook them in. And we've seen other people when they're reaching out for podcast guests, they tend to get a great reply rate because people like to be on podcasts. They like to feel special. They like to feel important. And you can make that email feel very personal and very targeted.
So what you're saying is it's the ask in the beginning, right? I'd like you to be on this podcast. Here's, I appreciate your position in and the name of the company, their title. Here's the people I've had on the show. Is that the kind of thing that we're talking about?
Yeah, for anyone who's like 101, that's where I would start. Then if you wanted to use things like clay.com, that's where you can get crazy personalized and take it to a whole nother level. But just for the basics, when you're the scenario that you're laying out here, Dan, it's something that you should get a great response rate for because you're not asking them to buy anything. You're just inviting them onto your podcast. So the key is just showing why you're reaching out to them, showing why they're important, showing how the problem is most podcasts don't do a great job of highlighting from real leaders that are solving real problems in the marketing world. That's why I want to invite you onto the podcast. And then would you be interested in?
Okay. And so they respond yes. Then what do I do?
In your scenario, you're talking about sending a link, which could be a great thing. But if you know that they're probably a good fit, I would actually recommend getting on the phone with them, especially if you're just getting started off. Like if it was me and I was reaching out to CMOs that fit my ICP, my ideal customer profile, for me, I'd want to get on that call to do a pre-podcast call. They're probably going to be a fit already if they fit, 100 to 500 employees. Maybe they're $10 million more, their company revenue is $10 million more. They're probably going to be a fit. I don't want to give them more friction to have to fill out a form. I'd probably just get on that call, start to develop that relationship, get them booked, and then hopefully get them as a customer down the line. But for me, my call to action, because that's a valuable phone call for me, is I'd probably just want to get in the call with them.
Okay, great. So that's that route. You say you don't send a link in the first email. If you are doing a cold email outreach, where eventually you want them to click a link, where in the process do you then send a link? Is it after they said, yes, I'm interested, and then you send it, or is it further down the road?
Once they reply, the walls are down. Like you're good at this point. You're not going to be marked as spam. If someone replies to you and you're replying to their reply, you're going into their inbox unless they tag you as spam for some reason after that. So you're good. So at that point, like the way our process works with our customers, we send an email, they say, yeah, I'm interested. We reply and we put a link to book a calendar appointment. Once they reply to your email, you're in the safe zone.
Okay. Is it a deal where they reply yes, the automation moves them to a different list and then it keeps moving on? Or are you interacting with them, like just looking at the email and noting it? Like, how does that work?
Are you asking, like, how does my team, for example, know if something's a positive or a negative or a neutral reply?
Yeah.
So the softwares will tell you, like, hey, you have a positive reply. It's not always right. And they do miss some too. So my team goes through every single response that we get, positive, negative, neutral. I have a team on my side. Every reply, if it's negative, I have a team member that handles that. If it's a positive or a neutral where someone says, hey, let's chat in the future, they tag it, they put it on our Slack channel. Then my team member that books the meetings, he handles it from there. So that's our process. But if you're not going to be doing, no one here is going to be doing the emailing at the scale that we're doing. So if you had one even virtual assistant working for you, they should be able to handle the whole process without much of an issue.
Okay. Look, I really appreciate all this great information that you've given us. This is really helpful, but you're not here for your health. Let's talk about your business and let's get you some business. So first of all, what is it that your company does specifically that makes it unique and better?
At this point, the cold email world, as we talked about earlier, has changed so much where just being a scrappy, hardworking person isn't going to get you results through cold email anymore. And that's where we've seen a lot of businesses that have now said goodbye to the cold email world because it's gotten too complicated. And in some ways, it's gotten a lot more expensive than it used to be. So for us, we're really developing this true domain expertise, whether it's in some of these more complicated AI lead gen tools like a clay.com or list building or copywriting, domain infrastructure, like we've become true experts in this space. So that's definitely one. Two, though, for us, most lead gen companies, they service just the solo founders or a lot of coaches. Very rarely do you see lead gen companies that are servicing large companies. And for us, we're really proud of the brands that we work with that trust us. Brands like Magellan Jets, a big private aviation company that's reaching out to the top C-suite of the top C-suite, as you can imagine, that can afford private aviation travel. Working with great unicorn brands like a tomorrow.io. We have a Fortune 500 that should be starting with us over the next few weeks, which is really exciting because I didn't know if a Fortune 500 would allow us into their systems, and it looks like they're about to.
Clearly, you're creating a lot of trust, right?
Exactly, which in my space is the biggest hurdle. And look, in most businesses, that's the biggest hurdle because in every industry, there's the people that say they can do it and then the people that actually do it. And a lot of times it's the people that say they can do it that don't execute, that spoil it for the people that actually do execute. And we've always made it so our pricing is like, hey, look, we're month to month, so cancel anytime. And we have guarantees behind everything we do. So you can't pay for something and not get results. Because when I was starting this company, I would talk to a lot of businesses that would tell me, I've worked with lead gen companies in the past. They sell me a year-long contract and then they just don't literally get me no results. And I just paid them a boatload of money. So for us, we've always tried to make it frictionless and easy for people to start working with us because we believe once they start working with us, they'll see our expertise, they'll see we're good to work with, and they'll see most importantly that they get great results.
Okay. You are way too humble, Adam. And so I'm going to begin this sentence for you and you finish it. All right, everybody, you're a moron if you don't work with us because
we deliver great results and we're good to work with.
There you go. I love it. I love it. So how do we get in touch with the email outreach company?
You can check us out at eocworks.com. You can email me at adam@eocworks.com. If you want any of our free chat GPT prompts, just let me know. If you have any questions around cold email, let me know. And then of course, if you want to work with us or explore working with us, of course, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation. And then I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Both of those are just at Adam Rosen.
Okay. And I'm going to know a little bit about your history. Like this isn't your first go around in the entrepreneurial world, is it?
No, I started my first company about 3 weeks before I graduated from a one-year MBA program I was doing. I had that company for about 5 years and I sold that company in 19. From there, I did a lot of work with different startups and small businesses. I also worked on a couple of real estate developments. I did a few different land development projects in the Northeast. And then, I started this company with my co-founder, same co-founder as my previous startup, about in the middle of 2021.
And what made you want to get involved in this?
I never thought I would be doing a cold email company. I'll tell you that much. When I sold my first company, we were talking about a lot of different ideas of what we want to do next. And cold email company was not necessarily on that list, although in some indirect ways it actually was in some ways. But it was just because one of the startups I was advising at the time just said to me, hey, man, we're struggling to get meetings on the books. Can you talk to my head of sales? And I talked to his head of sales and I saw there was a big gap with what they were not doing when it comes to cold email. I saw a big opportunity for them. So I called him, my co-founder of my previous startup, and I just said, hey, man, I think we can help these guys out. At the time, he was actually advising the startup that we built that got acquired on the same type of thing on cold emailing. So we said, hey, why don't we try building something out for these guys? And we started doing it for them and 2 other startups. And we just kept it for them for about the first 9 months. And then we started taking on new customers once we saw that this was a real business and a real opportunity, or could be a real business and could be a real opportunity. And we're 3 years strong so far.
Well, it sounds like everything has always gone perfect for you. You've never made a mistake. It's always been super easy. I know that's not true. Let's talk about the struggle, because that's the real part of entrepreneurship. The real part of entrepreneurship is not the success. It's what you do when things don't go well. So give me a story of one of the struggles and how you got through it.
Yeah, I haven't had a single struggle. I've been a overnight success, billion-dollar founder from the start. So no, I couldn't be further from that. That couldn't be further.
Oh man, is this interview going poorly? Yeah.
No,
so let's hear it. Let's hear it when you hit the wall like a cannonball, Adam.
I mean, there was a billion things. So first and foremost, and I don't know if I said it yet on this podcast, but I try to say it on every podcast I'm on. One of my biggest problems with the startup world is how over glamorized it is how we think, how we legitimately think what I just said earlier could actually be true, where it almost never is the case. And I was one of those bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young 22, 23-year-old founders just getting started that was billionaire or bust, or I'm going to do this startup for the rest of my life. And I couldn't have been further from the truth. We sold the company. Yes, it was an acquisition. And I was on a podcast yesterday and the host told me, I think 3% of businesses actually end up getting acquired, but it was not a good exit. It was an exit to try to get as much money back to our investors as possible, to make sure those big brands could live on. And then to make sure that my co-founder and I, we can move on to whatever's next, because we hit our wall with that business and we couldn't take it any further. And we didn't see the hope anymore in the light at the end of the tunnel. So there was a million things that we did wrong with that startup and a million mistakes we made. And there was a time we technically had 5 co-founders. It ended up with me and my current co-founder, just 2 of us. There was months where I didn't pay myself and my co-founder didn't pay himself, but all of our employees got paid because we didn't have enough money in the bank. I was living off of my credit card and my credit card was maxing out. There was a time when I had negative $342 in my checking account. My credit card was maxed out and I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I thought I was donezo.
How did you navigate that? What'd you do?
One is having a great co-founder who you have a great relationship with, who can navigate it with you, because it's a type of stuff where you really can't tell anybody. You can't tell, you don't want to worry your parents. You don't want to be giving a sob story to your friends. There's really very few people you can relate to. So for me, it was my co-founder. And I did have some very good mentors who are older than me that have been there, done that, have had the same type of hardships that I faced and continue to face as an entrepreneur that helped coach me through that. But one of my favorite quotes is by George Washington. And I used to have this written on my wall in Boston in my office, was perseverance and spirit have done wonders in all ages. And that's just always what I would remind myself is the winners never quit. The winners never give up. Yeah. And if I want to win, I have to overcome this, because if I can't overcome this, then I won't be able to overcome anything else in the future. And oh, by the way, what I'm going through is actually not that bad. There's people that have real bad stuff they're going through, whether it's health issues, people they've lost in their life, and many other struggles.
Adam, it's so easy to say that, right? And it's so easy to say that now, looking back over it. Okay, wow, all these things that I went through, they were difficult, but I learned a lot from them and I'm better for it. It's easy to say now when you're going through it. That's the struggle. Because when you're going through it, you don't know that you're going to be here sitting high and looking at the world going, hey, this is great. We're really killing it. All you know is that everything is going wrong. You have negative amount of money in your bank account. How do you get through that? What is the mental perseverance that you have to do, or that you did?
You have to believe. If you want to be an entrepreneur and you don't believe, then you should find a different game, because almost every entrepreneur is going to go through a similar situation.
And did you believe?
Absolutely. Yeah. I always knew what was on the other end of this. And I always hoped, now don't get me wrong. I always had a little bit of irrational belief. And you know what? I actually think that was one of the best things I had as an entrepreneur in some ways. Cause again, I was 22 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, billionaire or bust, IPO or bust. And you know what? I'm happy I thought that, because if I knew the stuff I was going to go through over the next 5 years, I probably would have said, you know what? I got this 6-figure job offer out of college. Why don't I just take that instead?
Yeah.
I'll be able to spend more time with my friends and enjoy all this, living in the city, all that stuff. I'm not going to have to worry about working 7 days a week, making the bare minimum amount of money you could possibly make and going through all the stuff we went through. So sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to, number one, check yourself, because being an entrepreneur is not meant for everybody. It is not.
And you mentioned a primary ticket to getting into the entrepreneur world, and that is a determination. And also you have to be a little bit delusional, right? I say this a lot. Hey, Adam, how can you tell if you're being delusional or not? And the answer is neither can anybody else, right? I know that you have an answer to that, but people will tell you, if you're a great entrepreneur, people will tell you you're being delusional, and you have to be, right? Because if you weren't delusional, you would look at all of the things that are against you and say, wait a second, the likelihood of my success is so small, I should not be doing this. So how do you answer that question though? Like, how do you handle your delusions of being an entrepreneur?
I think a lot of it is understanding yourself. The more you understand yourself, the more you can make decisions. Like I was talking about earlier, I used to believe everybody should be an entrepreneur. Now I don't. And it's not because being an entrepreneur is better or worse. It's just a different way of living. I currently live as a traveling entrepreneur, where for the better part of the last 3 years, I've been living out of a suitcase, going to different places for a few months here, a few months there with a lot of uncertainty. Maybe I choose the next place I'm going a week before I'm going there. That's the lifestyle I live in. I have a lot of people that reach out and say, I want to live that lifestyle. I want to travel the world and work remotely or build a business. But the reality is very few people do it because it's not necessarily what they should be doing, because they want to go home. And I don't blame them. A lot of ways I want that too, to their closet with their clothes and their shoes and their clean bed that only they are sleeping in.
Yeah.
And their kitchen organized the way that's organized. Like, not everybody should be traveling while building a business like I do. And not everybody should be an entrepreneur. Not everybody should be working at a big corporation, but having the self-awareness to understand, do you actually want this? And is it really what you want? Or do you just think you want it because you think it's cool, or it's what, the outside world wants you to do? I think a lot of it is really understanding yourself, and sometimes you don't know until you're doing it. And the reason why my business partner and I have been working together now for over a decade is because when times were tough, neither of us ran. When he could have bailed on me, or I could have bailed on him, when there was some real dark things that were happening in our business, I didn't run, he didn't run. We both stood there. We didn't call the other person out or say it's your fault. We just said, okay, how can I be better today? And you only learn that by doing it. And that's why I have the calluses that give me the confidence moving forward, because I'm going to have more bad things that happen in the future, and I'm going to have to check myself again then.
And what you're talking about is core to entrepreneurship. You can't do it alone. It never works alone. We have in this country this concept of the one person who stood their ground and made it happen, but it doesn't work that way. You need partnership. You need people there, because as human beings, we're a social species. We need help from others. We need people on our same level. We also need mentors, people who have already been there, who've already done it. And so you had both. You had partners, mentors, and the third thing is you took ownership of your mistakes. You didn't blame circumstances. You didn't say it's a tough market. What you said, essentially, it sounds like, I created this problem, and so I'm going to learn from it and move on. These are key in any successful entrepreneur, and certainly you are one of those. Adam, I believe everybody should check out Email Outreach Company. It is clearly a winner in a field that can be thought of as an old, outdated field, but all that means is that there's still value there. All that means is that the half-wits and the frauds have all failed, and that you have created something that actually works. Again, to get in touch with Adam, go to eocworks.com, or email Adam at eocworks.com. Everything that you've shared, Adam, everything has been so incredibly valuable. And I genuinely appreciate you coming on for Badass Entrepreneurs Only, helping us out. Last word, Adam, last word about someone who is interested in a cold email outreach campaign. What do they need to do?
Think of three things. One, infrastructure. You got to have your infrastructure built. Two, who's your ideal customer? What lists are you going to be getting? And then three, how can you write high performing copy, or I should say high converting copy, to make sure you can convert as many of those emails into meetings?
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I'm going to throw a little surprise at you, Adam, because this is only part one of our interview. I am going to hit you up because I just wasn't talking about some obscure idea about this cold email outreach. I am launching a new podcast called How to Be a Badass Entrepreneur, where we're going to get people who are new in business and help them. And in order to do this, I need to reach out to a lot of people. So I'm going to employ your services. So I'm going to have you back on, and I'm going to tell you if what you suggested worked or it didn't. And we're going to have that second part of the interview. Will you do that, Adam?
Let's do it. Let's have some fun with that.
Okay. Thank you so much for part one of your interview, for being on for Badass Entrepreneurs Only. And we will see you again. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Hey, one last thing. If you're feeling stuck in business life, wherever, download my book, Jumping the Gap, Kill Your Story and Take Action. In this book, you'll see how the stories that you tell yourself are stopping yourself from living your greatest life. Just text the word GAP, G-A-P, to this number, 213-409-8366. 213-409-8366, and text the word GAP. It's a short read, it's fun, it's easy, and if you hate reading like I do, you can grab the audiobook. It's at that same link. Just text the word GAP, G-A-P, to 213-409-8366. You'll love it. All right, that's it. Go out there and be badass today.